Welcome back to the 7th grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about naked bribery. It is common for most people to think that politicians and judges and lawyers, policemen, people in high government, they're all working for your best interest. Or that is what we're bred to believe. Those people that are working in these high-minded goals and attempting to uphold the letter of the law and be moral and all these things, they probably represent 30% of the people in these jobs.
We led to believe that this corruption thing happens overseas, or like you go to Mexico, if you want to get something built, you got to grease their palms. Or they tell you, like, in Jamaica, or they always talk about other countries. Like, if you watch the news, like 2020, some shit pops up. There's always the corruption. And I'm like,
overseas
shit,
corruption is through the roof.
It's rampant. But when you sit here and look, I'm not a Trump fan, but when he talked about draining the swamp, that's what he was talking about. When you realize how much influence on our government Big Pharma has, and like it's crazy.
But
or
these politicians, they aim high and deliver very low. Obama was about hope and change, and Trump was about draining the swamp. That's the same thing. That is the same thing. They just give you different terminology, put a different face on it, and soft pedal it to the people. So, one of the most corrupt places on the planet that you always hear about, that has an entire country that's dedicated to running scams and internet spam on people, is the continent of Africa. Well, the country I'm talking about is Nigeria. But the continent of Africa has massive corruption problems. Now, if you go to the World Economic Forum's website, that's right, the bad guys, the people who want to control Africa or are responsible for setting policies for governments and corporations that are robbing and stealing from Africa and teaching that to the African people. On their website, they have a survey, and they survey countries, the people in these countries, and they find out, what areas of the public sector are affected by corruption. Well, out of all the countries surveyed, the people in the Democratic Republic of Congo are the most affected, with 80% of the public service users saying that they paid a bribe in the past 12 months. 85% thinking corruption in the country is getting worse. Now, Mauritius was found to have one of the lowest bribery rates on the continent, with just 5% of those surveyed saying they've paid one bribe in the previous year. Now, Mauritians are reasonably optimistic about actions being taken against corruption. Only 55% believe in this. But within the countries surveyed, the poorest are the hardest hit by corruption, with the cost of bribes meaning families have less money to pay for essentials like medicine, food, and water. Young people between the ages of 18 and 34 were also found to be more likely to pay bribes than those over the age of 55. In some countries, including Kenya, Malawi, Nigeria, Uganda, 2/3 of people fear retaliation if they speak up about corruption. So,
here's where it gets complicated.
Well, hold on. Where does this come from? How does this start?
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well,
but wait. Hold on. This is, you got to go back in time.
Yes,
because these people that have been turned to the dark side are the ones that were the kings and the royalty in Africa and the merchants that were selling their own people to European slave traders. So that's where this starts. That's how old this is. It didn't just start when these white people showed up in these Range Rovers that, said, hey, we want to go to get us a safari. And then after the safari, let's talk about those mountains over there. They probably have some minerals in them. Let's strike a deal about that.
I slightly disagree.
Oh, okay.
Slightly. Because that is true. That they did have a society that was based on money based on, on slavery. slavery also over there wasn't as crazy. The Arab slavery was worse than usually the black slavery. We've already had those
Hey,
conversations.
slavery is slavery. Don't
Yeah. I dig it. I
don't
dig it.
don't light
But
skin, dark skin slavery. Okay,
oh no,
slavery is slavery.
no. But I definitely feel that once those safaris started to happen, once those Europeans started to come over and saw the wealth, they're like, oh shit,
We
we
gotta
got to
take
man
this
some
shit.
moose. Yeah, that's and so I do believe that there was some corruption, but I think it was on a wider scale because if you pay attention, if you keep Africa poor, then we can keep exploiting Africa, and so the exploitation starts at the top. Um, the president that got killed, we talked about him when COVID first started. He was in
Magufuli,
Magufuli. He
Tanzania.
was in I think it was Tanzania or Tanzania. He was the president, and so this guy, so he was fighting against corruption. He kicked out Bill Gates. He had kicked out Mossad and all the Arab stuff,
The
and he
mining
had
companies
yes, exactly.
that
He
were
had,
controlled by intelligence agencies.
yes, he had kicked out Mossad. He had kicked out everybody, and literally months later, he disappeared. Then come to find out, he was dead. But the bottom line is, he's like, you guys are taking advantage of my country. You guys, you come in here and you bribe from the top down, and you don't do anything for the people, and you buy up the land, and you cheat. And so you had one man standing up against it, but that is. They use the same playbook. I think England started it, and then France did it, and now you got China doing it rampantly. Where okay, well, we're helping you with infrastructures, we're offering you loans you can't pay back, um, and then they start bribing officials to get this shit done, and of course, then you got two or three people making a little bit of money, but the corruption goes all the way down to from the top, the president, vice president,
A
cabinet, the
fish
board,
stinks from the head.
and it goes all the way. Next, you got cops, you got aldermen, you got everybody trying to, have to get a little bribe money in. But like I said, it's very necessary to keep Africa poor because then you could take advantage of its people better. But if look, in the prime example of this, of course, it goes back to Barack's second term, where Hillary bragged about killing
Gaddafi.
Muammar Gaddafi. Yes, and the reason, like I said, whenever we talk about it, the bottom line was he was going to take the thing that keeps the dollar prevalent is the fact that you use the dollar to buy oil. So Gaddafi was going to say, well, look, I got 22 African nations that are willing to go from the dollar to the dinar. He was bringing back the classic currency of his people. The dinar was a gold coin. That's why he had 146 tons of gold. And he was going to make you, if you want to buy oil from these African nations, you got to use the dinar. Well, Hillary killed him. Now, fast forward to now, there's a war over there, and we had talked about this on 4 podcasts ago. There's a war in the Ukraine and
What
Russia.
happened to the gold, though?
Oh,
That's the
whoa,
question.
whoa, that's a huge question. That gold disappeared. And you got to remember, people don't tell you, at the time of his death, he was the richest man in the world. A black man. He said, I'm a black man. He said, I'm not the original people of North Africa. And he broke all that stuff down. But he was the richest man in the world when he died, richer than who's the guy from Apple and the guy from Tesla and all, richer than all those phony baloney motherfuckers. But um, fast forward to now, and we talked about this. So right now, with all these sanctions on Russia, Russia was like, look, if you want to buy oil from us, you got to use rubles or rupees. I don't want to say it incorrectly, rupees. And so then you got India buying oil from Russia during this embargo. You got China buying oil from Russia. So like this is what they were afraid of. If people start buying oil with other currencies, then the dollar will not be worth anything. And Putin bragged about it. He's like telling like, look, America loves to bite the hand that feeds it. Well, that's not going to work in this situation. So back to the corruption in Africa, it's on purpose that you got to keep these people poor. So here's the crazy part. People complain about Haile Selassie, and we do know Haile Selassie did some fucked up shit to get his position, but it pissed the Europeans off when he was doing the things he was doing because he's like, yeah, because I'm not letting you I'm not letting you fuck over my people. I'll fuck them over a little bit, but then he forced all these European nations to pay him to come over there. And then when Italy tried to take him over, he fought him off. So yes, it's necessary. Excuse me, it's not. I don't want it to happen, but it's necessary for these other countries to be able to take advantage of Africa for that place to be poor. But how are you the richest continent on earth? Riches in diamonds, riches in gold, riches in oil, but you're the poorest in the world.
But it's
That's
not
by
because
design.
Africa has been outsmarted by anybody.
Oh
It's
no.
because of the people that have the reins of power in these African countries are greedy.
No, hold it, Roscoe. You said some deep shit earlier when you were talking about the Nigerians. This is a true story. The Nigerians are some of the smartest, hardest working people on earth. Well,
Yes,
whether
but they are also some of the most pettiest motherfuckers you will ever come across. And so if you
true,
think I'm
true,
bullshitting,
true.
all you got to do is spend some time around Nigerians and then go and watch Nigerian television or the Nigerian TV shows or the movies. They're all about revenge. They're all
Getting
about
back.
backstabbing. They're all about taking something from somebody and crisscrossing and shit being double-handed and somebody being some infidelity. Listen,
I was about to say it's always about sleeping with somebody. Go ahead. I'm
these are
sorry.
some of the most morally bankrupt motherfuckers you will come across. So this is the thing. No, Nigerians are beautiful people, but there is a contingent of the Nigerian identity that is fucking corrupt. And listen, no. But here's the thing though, because it's not Nigerians only. You see this in other ethnic groups also.
Yeah,
So
West African cultures, yes.
no, European cultures too.
Yeah.
European cultures too. No,
I thought
no,
we were talking about. Yeah. I
dude.
dig it.
Look at how many fucking Japanese fucking stories are about revenge. You know what I'm saying? How many fucking Japanese stories about motherfuckers over there are petty too. The thing is though, is like they're similar to the Nigerians in that way. So I'm not
Look.
singling out one, I'm showing the similarities.
Yeah.
But hang on,
Well,
I'm making a point here. So that when you have a certain type of personality, the several tribes is different tribes in Nigeria, but if you have the same genetic markers for greed that manifest in the personalities of the people born with these genetic markers, okay, then those people of that nation will be different than their neighbors like Ghana, or they'll be different from people like Senegal, or they'll be different than people from Zulu, South Africa, or they're different from people in, say, Tanzania. Because Magufuli, he is probably one of the only African leaders in a long time, and not the only, but in a long time, to speak truth to power. One of the last ones before him was Patrice Lumumba. So, but you see what happened to him. The CIA used Che Guevara to kill him.
Here's the problem with that because we're told.
Wait. So what I'm telling you is when you have a guy like Magufuli that comes around once every couple generations, that is a warrior for truth, justice, and righteousness,
He's educated.
It's too much for the powers of corruption and darkness to handle, so they have to take these people out.
Look, first things first. Well, I thought we loved democracy. In fact, we love to fight with these other countries. So you have Patrice Lumumba, who was voted in by his own people, and we went out and killed that motherfucker. So that's some fucked up shit. Second, at the time we were just talking about Africa. Let's talk about these other countries because you are absolutely correct. You have a culture of this shit in these other countries. When you read about these other places, it's corruption all through Europe. It's corruption all through Asia. Literally, it's despicable. So, like I said, we're not saying America's better or nothing like that. We're just letting you know, like, when you keep your people poor like that, it's on purpose. So either when you keep the people disenfranchised, it's either because you want the government to exploit them, or in America, you keep people poor so these corporations exploit the government.
When it's bad when people in South Africa
I feel sorry for you
are complaining about the Nigerians.
Oh, man.
You see what I'm saying? No. If you talk to a person from South Africa, like Cape Town or Johannesburg, especially Johannesburg, which is like super fucking like, crime ridden. A lot of the motherfuckers that bring in the crime are Nigerian criminals. So what I'm telling you is that there's a certain type. And within Africa, these people go looking for a certain type. It's the same rule that applies to espionage and turning people. Mice, money, intrigue, compromise, and ego. So
look, they look for those soft borders also. In Africa, they don't check them borders. So you got people sneaking over. Some people just to get a job and work. Other people to take advantage because they know their hustle will work over there. Like, look, they ain't seen this hustle before. All of us, let's go over there and run the 3-car Monte on all these motherfuckers at once. It's some crazy shit. Look, one of the crazy stories I read recently was about these dudes want to take advantage of the small village in Mexico. So it's 3 brothers that go down there and they realize like, hey, these motherfuckers, they don't even have internet cable, they ain't got shit. It won't be much for us to take over this little town. And they go down and they start running that hustle and scam on them. And they like, look, hey, we're descendants from these Mayan whatever, and these people, they start running this scam. So then when the scam kind of stopped working, they go back to like to Mexico City and get this chick who's like 17 or 23, like, hey, we want you to be this Mayan goddess. Man, next thing you know, they start taking over. And so she like ran this, she really fell for the shit that she thought she was a Mayan goddess and started, you already know this. So when it was like five people that started,
basically they started a cult.
It became a cult. So five people said, man, I'm tired of working for free. I ain't doing this shit no more. So what did she do? She killed him and drank the blood. So there's a neighbor in town where people kept coming up missing. So this young boy, he's like 16, 17, he goes to these caves because he said like it's nighttime and he's seeing his light inside these caves. He's like working like, hey, well, what the fuck is this? Goes in there and he sees the shit, runs back to his town, runs back to the major town. Like he's yelling and screaming. It's like, 25 miles away. He tells the police, vampires. I'm seeing vampires. Of course they don't believe him. So the one cop is about to take the kid back to his town. And he tells the cop, he's like, hey, man, I'm telling you what I saw was some vampire shit. They go back. They go to the cave. They are never heard from again. So the police go. And yes, this motherfucker had torture racks, had people strung up, had motherfucking pikes in their asses. And so the girl and her brother take off. They run back to the town and hide. They catch her and they admit to everything. Like, yeah, these brothers came and got it. So what the point I'm trying to make is like, yes, that being disconnected from the world, that's a good or a bad thing. I don't care about that part. But you do have people that recognize these situations and take advantage of them. Because even there, the three brothers that started the hustle came from Mexico City. And they knew they could be able to find a small town where they can get away with this hustle. And that's what these guys are doing. Like I said, we're not just talking about Africa. We're talking about the world. That this corruption thing is a real thing. It is designed on purpose. For capitalism to work, you got to have poor people. And that's my big deal when everybody worships these damn billionaires. When people talk about Steve Jobs, when people talk about who's Elon Musk, I swear to God, he's on the retarded spectrum. Same thing with motherfucking Bezos. Weird motherfuckers. When they talk about these people, like, oh, they're such great people. Well, so you got Amazon giving away free bananas. They brag about giving away free bananas, but they sit there and work their people to death. They're literally.
You got to understand something, though. So let's get into charitable fraud. So let's start with black folks first. Haiti has a history of turmoil, from slavery, the slave revolt, and then the wars that occurred there, the earthquake machines that have been turned on to disrupt any prosperity, and then the intervention of Bill and his wife Hillary Clinton. So for the longest time there have been no police force for charity corruption.
That's true.
Not until recently has the FBI even looked into it, but they're specifically looking in South America for this. But the IRS looks the other way when the allegation of charity fraud is committed by a former American president and their associates. Bill Clinton took Hillary Clinton in the winter of 1975 to Haiti and formed a connection with Haitian charities through pastors in Liberation Theology Haitian churches. Bill and his Haitian cohorts used the United Nations Special Envoy privileges to evade prosecution from theft by deception. Partners in Health was created with Paul Farmer as a Haitian charity to fight AIDS. All of the money was being vacuumed up from all these corporations and these celebrities. But when you go and you investigate, where the money is going to is to people that don't exist and to addresses that don't match up to anything geographic. So
if you ever notice, most of these organizations only investigate brown people. They very rarely ever go for anybody.
Hold on. Wait a minute. In 2010, Barack Obama gave some of his Nobel Peace Prize money to Haitian Earthquake Fund relief charity run by Bill Clinton and George Bush. Remember, Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas when the CIA cocaine drug airplanes were landing in Mena, Arkansas. Now, at that time, George H.W. was the head of the CIA. So, this is a long relationship of Skull and Bones people working with Bill Clinton. Now, the Earthquake Relief Fund and all the former and all others since 1975 were simply opportunities to concentrate funds and hide them in plain sight. So there's buzzwords you have to pay attention to, and one of those is an in-kind charitable donation. Remember this term. The reason is because when disasters happen, charities are given in-kind contributions and donations. The in-kind contribution works by donating goods from a corporation. That corporation can write off those goods as tax deductible. Now check this crazy shit out. The tax write-off will be greater than if that company paid taxes on the retail sale of those goods. I will say this again. The tax write-off will be greater than if they paid taxes selling that same item through retail.
So let's give an example. So if the sales
okay,
tax...
no, you said bananas. What if Chiquita donated 14 tons of bananas to Amazon? They're going to write off those bananas. And
at a higher rate.
And the tax write-off is going to be higher than the taxes they would have paid on the retail sale. Fucking genius and criminal at the same time. So you got to understand, like, this is how these people operate. Let that sink in for a minute. So every time a disaster happens, they're donating goods that's going to be a tax write-off, and they're saving all this money in taxes.
Look, you heard what these politicians say, never waste a good disaster.
Right.
Like, that's some disgusting shit.
Now, think about the current disaster war scenario in the Ukraine. Now it's happening to white people, okay? Earlier you were like, well, they concentrate on brown people until shit happens to white people. And now it shit's happening to white people, and you have, you have these blue and yellow flags everywhere. And everybody's like, dude, donate to help Ukraine. Donate to help Ukraine. Hold on, man. Why? Why are we donating to help Ukraine? That's not how you help these people. First of all, the Red Cross and all those corrupt fucking organizations, they got the bread to go over there and help them people. And they have venture fund capitalists giving them money. Okay, so they don't need your fucking money, because all that's doing is funneling this concentration, funneling this wealth and concentrating it into one place, but in plain sight. But hold on, I'm not done with this shit, because that is a war. There's a theater of war right now. So donations ain't going to get through there. All right. None of that shit you're talking about none of that shit's getting through there. The white helmets are not getting in there when bombs are being dropped. It's not fucking happening. All right. The help they're getting is coming from their own people in large multinational charitable organizations that launder a lot of money. So a lot of people get caught up in this whole thing about, oh, it's such a travesty. Why weren't you people talking about this when it was Syria? Why weren't you people talking about this when it was black people in Libya? Where the fuck were these people that were talking about the slave auctions in fucking Libya?
North Africa, Libya, yes.
But now it's this fucking catastrophic disaster. You only saying that because they're white people.
Hold on. See, okay.
And those are the whitest of white people.
Hold on, like we've already talked about this on our podcast. If you regular listeners, you would know that these Ukrainian motherfuckers are the hotbed for this neo-Nazi political bullshit that's going on right now. This is the home base for all this super racism shit. They literally have set up camp in the Ukraine.
The black people that show up from these NGO, these non-governmental organizations that are helping them through charities, are being called nigger.
Yes, like it's cute, like literally. So when where was
Ukraine when Libya was in trouble, when Syria was in trouble, when the people of Palestine was in trouble, when all this fucked up shit was going on, when Hong Kong, when the cool ass people that were raging against the machine in Hong Kong, where were the Ukrainians when the people of Hong Kong needed help against communist China invading and taking over there? And the fucked up part about that, man, is that those people, those regular ass people in fucking Hong Kong were holding up American flags, say, "America, help us, please." You know what I'm saying? And they're like
begging. And
then there's all these fucking slave camps and these concentration camps in China for ethnic cleansing, and nobody does anything. They're like, oh, that's tough shit.
Whoa, that's not true. People do stuff, Roscoe.
No. Reporting on it is fine. I'm talking
No,
about
no,
like
no, no.
running up in
Oh,
that bitch, like let's bust these motherfuckers
no,
out.
no. I wasn't going there. I was going to talk about the NBA. Now, see, these motherfuckers love to talk about all these human rights issues, but as soon as the borders in China open up, they can't wait to get their product over there because when you got 3 billion people, you got a lot of middle class, you got a lot of disposable income. They do not care about human rights issues when it comes to the motherfucking dollar. So it's oh man, you literally, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim over there, you're being fucked over. You're in camps. You're all this other shit. But we don't
Dude,
care.
not even that. Falun Gong. Falun Gong is the culture of ancient China. And so that's a really fucked up story but the people in Falun Gong are super passive. They don't
Oh,
fight back. And so, but the thing is because their consciousness is in a different place. They realize that all of this is temporal, and the corporeal would just be clothes they will shed, for a better life in another existence, which is fine. And that sounds Christian in the same way. But the problem is that those people are being rounded up.
used, fucked
Millions,
over.
millions of these people are dying every year. Millions. And it's for organ harvesting. Now, this is what I'm talking about. Where are the charitable organizations to stop organ harvesting in China? See, nobody wants to run up in there and get that Chinese smoke. They don't fucking want it. You know what I'm saying? But the crazy part about it is the money and the resources are there. To send like guerrilla armies in there on some super stealth ninja shit to do something about it. And you got guys crazy enough to run up in there and do that shit. They
Uh,
trust me, they are
th-
alive. I know these guys. I've grown up with guys
no, no,
like
no.
this.
We
They
talk about
exist.
this.
They
There's a
exist.
book.
They're
There's a
real.
book called Navy Frogmen, and the war was literally over, and these motherfuckers did not know the war was over. They were still bombing shit, sabotaging bridges and shit. 50 years later, they found these niggas like, oh no, we didn't know the war was over. But look, the point I was when I talk about being white, I wasn't talking about the people being helped. I'm referring to the fact, like, look at Haiti. With all the corruption and all the money that Hillary Clinton and her organization stole, the Clintons, excuse me, stole over 600 million. They were talking about the resources in Haiti that Haiti used to grow its own rice. We used to grow our own food, but now you're forced to buy rice from the mainland, which is America. They had the most gold in the Caribbean, gold resources in the Caribbean, but they don't have access to that. What I was referring to is the fact that Wyclef Jean, when he was running for
That
president,
corrupt son of a bitch. Fuck him.
hold it. Ye- Before that, remember he had set up all kinds of shit for the Haitian relief, and they saying that money went to now. I don't know. See, the thing is, I don't know the niggas, so I don't know if it's true. But that's my point. When the only motherfucker that got arrested was a black guy, or whenever there's a president over there, all of a sudden they get corrupt, they get caught with shit. But you mean to tell me that you haven't caught the Hillary Clinton? You haven't caught her organization stealing
But
money
why
from?
is that the first time he's running for president in Haiti, though? But see,
Uh,
but here's the other situation with Haiti. Wherever the earthquake happens, whenever the earthquake happens, it always happens in areas where super poor people live. In the areas with these exquisite hotels made with all this foreign money, they're never affected. There is technology that was created by Nikola Tesla that can create earthquakes.
and we know his lab was raided when he died. Let's not even believe that
Yes, and
he
the
talked about
uncle of
frequency.
Donald
Yes,
Trump was one of the people that working for the
yes.
FBI that fucking raided that lab.
It said they didn't find anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they literally this guy Trump literally said that his actual uncle said they did not find anything. So bullshit. I'm calling bullshit. Look, the point I'm trying to make is that this corruption thing is not exclusive to any one area, and what it is that people literally try to create situations and organizations that hide their corruption. And look at the big pharma medical industry in America, which was set up by who? Henry Ford and them brothers. They sit down and like, okay, so once they realized they could start making prescriptions and medicine from oil, they're like, well, look, we'll make it from oil. And they literally create, and anybody who talked against them, like, hey, the dandelions. We talked about this. It pisses me off whenever me and you do a podcast, and then all of a sudden I see reels and stuff 2 or 3 years later about dudes breaking down dandelions can be used for all kinds of respiratory issues. But you got Bayer making Roundup and all this other shit. That's because they know that dandelion and the dandelion root is their natural adversary. That is their natural competition. If you sit here and you dry up that dandelion root and you drink it in a tea, it will cure half your shit. If you take the dandelions and snip those and make tea from it before you before they turn to little seeds and shit, you literally will help you with your asthma and your respiratory issues. So there are thousands of cures that were known for thousands of years that have been you've been tricked and convinced that, oh, if it's in pill form it's better. It does. And me and you, again, we talked about this on past podcasts where you sit here and people tell you about the side effects. I'm like, well, the side effects are on purpose, and they get mad at you. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Like, no, I'm not. I'm an adult. Like, how did our people survive before this medical industry existed? Because they knew the plants and what they were good for. So what I'm saying is that literally Henry Ford and the American Cancer Society and all these different societies were set up by him to justify their research and justify that anybody who spoke up against them was like, well, look, he's not part of the ADA, he's not part of the American Dental Society, so he's not a valid. He doesn't have a valid point of view. And they've been doing that shit since the 1920s and 30s. And this is how they took over Big Pharma and created Big Pharma. And to this day, that these people spend all kinds of money for half-assed cures. We saw it with COVID, where they literally had treatments that were used in other countries, but they're telling you that it's animal tranquilizer and all this other bullshit, and is a dewormer. They're telling you that to discredit that today because that was one of the few things that worked in other countries. But it was cheap. It was cheap, and it was proven in 2009 to be effective for many antibacterial and antiviral uses. But the bottom line is that they wanted to control the narrative. So this is what we're trying to tell you about corruption. Corruption happens on every level, not just the presidential level, not just the senator, not just the alderman, but on the corporate level. Right now, all we do is talk about these billionaires like Elon Musk. Look, I'm a labor leader. How many unions does Elon have at his organizations? Has he knocked the unions down? Well, look, Warren Buffett's our guy because we're from Omaha, but look at how he does Coca-Cola. Look how he does the Burlington Northern. They're literally that's a railroad that is owned by Berkshire Hathaway. Literally, they're battling unions. Like literally, we haven't had a raise in years. They are nothing but greed, and it's not corruption as in okay, he's not bribing people and that kind of shit, but it's corruption as in they sit here and they create this narrative where why do you need unions? Unions are bad. You'll never get a holiday. So you have all these news media places talking about unions, but you don't hear about strikes anymore. Only recently have we started hearing about strikes. There was a strike at John Deere. They got their demands. Strike at Kellogg's. So my union went and gave food and water to the strikers at Kellogg's, but they literally were striking at Kellogg's because they were working. What was a work week? Roscoe, they were working like an 80-hour work week. They were doubling every day. And if you laid off or you called in sick, you got fired. These are brand new employees. This is the shit that we're talking about, that there's a process in place to stop these motherfuckers. But every time you try to rise up, they will assassinate your ass. They will suicide your ass real quick. Like how many of these labor leaders are committing suicide? That's not by accident. So we're warning you that, speak up. We need this. We need people to stop this corruption. We need better politicians. We need better business heads.
In 2004, Bill Clinton published his autobiography titled My Life. On page 33 of the book, Bill Clinton talks about how the Clinton Foundation bought a hot springs resort for his family to use. The investigation of the Clinton Foundation, run by FBI Director Robert Mueller, his assistant James Comey, avoids this fact and looked the other way. So he's telling you that he used his charitable foundation to buy real estate for his family to use and nothing more.
Hold it. When you hear about these charitable organizations, all these guys have them. It's a tax shelter. We get that. but they're literally buying stuff not for their companies or not for the people that they're supposed to be like what's the word they're giving, they're not charitable the charities, they're not giving to the charities, they're literally doing this for a tax shelter, and then they just sit here and they got their feet kicked up on a beach someplace. Oh, it's despicable. But the problem is, like, some of this shit is not even corruption. It's the fact that if you're not in the club, you can't do this shit. If you're not Skull and Bones, if you don't go to Yale, you ain't gonna be able to do this shit.
Yeah, it's like your boy George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't
Yes,
in it.
and we laugh, but he was always ahead of his time. He broke that shit down. He's telling you like, look, um, I remember I remember when Richard Pryor talked about going to the White House and meeting Ronald Reagan, and he's like, man, yeah, we in trouble. He's like, yeah, this motherfucker jerks off to missiles and shit. MX, that was during the arms race. People don't understand. People now don't understand what it's like growing up in the '80s, where you were kind of taught about the threat of war. Was real. Like, these motherfuckers weren't getting along. You had Gorbachev on one side, you had Reagan on the other. So I think that's also a big issue we have when it comes to Russia, is that Russia's been our enemy so long. They're trying to permeate that shit. Russia is not our equal. Their economy is not our equal. You
I
do have
remember I remember there's this interview with Lawrence Fishburne, and he started acting when he was a teenager,
like 14 or some shit.
and he was in the movie Apocalypse Now in the 1970s. And he talks about when Ronald Reagan became president. He said the vibe that permeated America at that time through that president's entire term was that fuck you niggas. Like, I don't give a shit. I ain't helping you motherfuckers. And that's what it was. Because this was prime time welfare recipient era. Government cheese, government peanut butter, all that shit. But see, that's also when Freeway Ricky Ross
Yeah.
is bringing the cocaine into South Central Los Angeles using CIA planes. Also, they had the
CIA
CIA.
drugs. Yeah. Period.
Yeah, but those same CIA planes was bringing cocaine into Mena, Arkansas. So it was on the West Coast and it was in the southern Midwest, dropping that shit down there.
Whenever you hear this is the shit that started with Reagan. So people got to understand, whenever you hear law and order, that means keep the darkies in line, keep the niggas and the Mexicans in line. So whenever somebody runs on that law and order campaign, that's
I
what that
hate
shit's
black
about.
people. I hate brown people.
Yeah. Like, you guys are such criminals. You
Just
guys.
think Wounded Knee. Whenever you hear Law and Order, just think Wounded Knee and Custer.
And so corruption is much easier when you have a scapegoat. So, like, we a lot of black people love to talk about Nazis and Hitler, and people are stupid. Go read about World War II so you can find out how this shit started, what really goes on. I'm trying to argue with a black chick because she's like, this guy had a swastika tattoo. I'm like, shit, that's that nigga business. I don't have to like it, but you don't even know where that shit came from.
Yeah, but
You
you're
don't
not
know.
talking about Hitler. You're talking about a person that was at. Give the people context. It was a person that she saw at
Yeah,
a sporting event, and a guy
no, no,
had a swastika. Okay, but she saw him in the public somewhere, and
yeah,
he
yeah,
had a swastika tattooed on his leg, and she was
yep.
disgusted. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, no, no. She called herself cussing him out, which I know the
Yeah, she
expression.
was disgusted. You know, she's like,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
bullshit.
She ain't got the balls to do that shit. She's full of shit. I know that. But either way, I'm like, look, people don't understand what this Nazi is. So I'm like, look, read about World War II. Do you think we went to war
Real
with Hitler?
Nazis. Learn about what real Nazis were.
Because I'm trying to explain it to her, and she don't want to hear that shit. I'm like, look, I know what you think, but first thing, Hitler was a socialist. He didn't like black people. He didn't like Jews. He didn't like nobody. But the bottom line was they early on learned about scapegoating. Read his books, Mein Kampf. He talks about this shit. So what you got to understand is that they picked the Jews because, well, hell, the Jews had all the wealth. They were corrupt too, and he picked them as a scapegoat. I get it, but he did do some shit to fucked up shit to black people. And I'm not talking about that no Jesse Owens shit. I'm talking about literally, if you were black male in Germany during that time, you were castrated. Castration of black men has
But
been
it
going on for
wasn't
years.
just men, it was little boys. He was doing this to young black boys that were living in Germany at the time. There's an
Black
article
kid, black,
about it. There's an
yeah,
article
black Hitler
about these
Youth.
kids. No, they weren't Hitler Youth, man. They were just black kids that happened to live in Germany, and they were castrated.
Here's where it gets even crazier. You do realize that Germans were black. You mean you know this? Me and you've talked about on past podcasts. But the conch, the royal family, the original royal family of Germany are black. So Hitler was doing some really fucked up shit. But I digress. All this shit. That's the last time we went to war with some white folks was damn near it was probably Hitler because America ain't known for going after white folks, and even during World War II, they bombed
No, that's not
Japan.
true. Well, they were dropping bombs on Serbia. You know what I'm saying? In
Yeah,
Croatia and shit
yeah,
in the
that's true.
'90s.
They,
But see, that was
it,
really a distraction for Bill Clinton getting his dick sucked.
the, oh my God, he had to create a war just to see. But that's what we mean by corruption. Literally, I didn't have sexual relations with that woman, but she kept the blue dress. Oh shit!
Bomb them fuckers. Bomb them.
Shit. Oh shit! You kept the dress? What kind of trip is you? And you froze it? that nigga's whole flow changed when he found out she kept that blue dress. Look, I hate to tell you this, for people who didn't know, these young people who don't know this, before that blue dress resurfaced, he was denying everything. Man, I ain't have sex with that girl. I ain't did shit. But Linda Tripp kept the blue dress and put it in the freezer next to her Elvis towel that she saved.
So check
Like
it out.
literally.
Let's talk about Latin America. Latin America has mad corruption on the level that Africa has mad corruption. So these brown people down in Latin America got their own thing going on corruption wise. Now, there is a group called it's an NGO. It's called the NGO Transparency International, and they publish the Corruption Perceptions Index (CPI) every year, and they've done that since 1995.
What's the worst? Honduras right now?
Hang on. We're gonna get to it. So it compiles results from independent surveys by NGOs to estimate how corrupt the public sectors of different countries are. Now, Uruguay went from massively corrupt to one of the least corrupt nations due to the policies of President Frente Amplio. President Amplio is generally seen as a transparent political machine, gaining the trust of the people to the point that it has recently managed to push through policies and legislation the majority of citizens are opposed to, yet still remain the front runner for elections the next year. Due to the geographical location, Central America, home to the Corruption Perception Index's worst performers in the region, it's a hub of drug trafficking beset by criminal groups. In the face of weak economics and state institutions, drug trafficking organizations have historically acted with impunity to transport contraband through this area, buying the loyalty of underpaid officials along the way. So, all these banana republics with their corrupt politicians, and it trickles down to the corrupt police in the villages, and everybody wants their cut from the top to the bottom. So, now, Brazil is the Louisiana of South America. Because, just like Louisiana, these swampy ass places, they tend to have the most greasiest, most corrupt politicians, police, government individuals, judges around. There's a documentary out right now you should watch. It's called Manda Bala. 2 words. M-A-N-D-A. Second word, B-A-L-A. It's called Send a Bullet in English. And it's about the kidnapping industry in Brazil and how all these organizations that are built on kidnapping are funded by politicians or politicians that look the other way in the public eye when the
What
lights
it
on.
was the bribery. They were literally like kidnapping like rich people's kids just for the ransom. Like if you were like say you're a baseball player or you're famous, they're kidnapping kids just for,
But guess what the thing is? The kidnappers aren't just two dudes on the lam just trying to make some quick money so they can go
oh
live
no,
in Tokyo.
they're cops.
Right. But they're cops that are paid off. They make their cut, but they're
Hmm.
hourly employees. They're not even middle management because
That's
that
terrible. That's
money
terrible.
is going to these politicians. One politician in particular is Jader Babao. And this motherfucker had a frog farm in
Hmm.
Brazil. Oh, you
Oh
got to
shit.
watch this documentary, man. It is fascinating.
Uh,
Dude,
oh, oh, oh.
listen. Crazy about I heard about this shit two ways. I love, filmmaking. I heard it was shot with 16 millimeter with anamorphic lenses. I'm like, oh, this is gonna look sick. So I went to go see it at a local art house cinema.
That's some true
Great.
gorilla shit, huh? Some
True
gorilla
gorilla shit.
filmmaking.
Dude. Then I'm at the dollar store one day and I see this shit in there for $1. Fuck yeah, I'm buying that shit. Dude,
Oh, no shit.
winning, my dude. So dollar store has some fucking gems. Don't sleep. So listen, man, I'm
That's funny for
telling
other
you.
reasons.
Yes, so many. But I digress. Watch the documentary Mandabala, Send a Bullet. It's fantastic, but it's one of the South American corruption stories that you see manifest in different forms and in different points in history. The country of Brazil, the Portuguese who started slavery, okay, who started slavery in modern times in Africa, right? The Barbary Coast. These motherfuckers took enslaved Africans to the country of Brazil and made them build their plantations and clear the jungle and do all this bullshit for them. And now these white Portuguese that still run Brazil want to tell you they're not racist when that is one of the most racist countries in the world still today. Most colorist countries in the world today.
Color struck. Well, hold up. Malcolm talked about this shit way back then, but people got to understand there's a reason for this. The Iberian Peninsula, which is Spain and Portugal, was run by who? Muslims, Islam. The black folks took it over. They took over that peninsula, and when it was over, they're like, "Look, we'll never be controlled by a black person again." Portugal made that statement. They're like, "We'll never be controlled by this again." So instead, they did the complete 180, and they become the hotbed for super racism, slave trade, and all that shit. Now, there's a reason I brought up Hitler when it comes to corruption because people forget something. Do you remember all the debt Hitler incurred? And then he changed the national currency. Like literally, he has borrowed all this money, and we're gonna pay you back with rubles and all that. We're gonna pay you back, and then all of a sudden, after he gets all this debt, he changes the currency. So we sent you all this money that ain't worth shit. So the whole idea that this corruption only happens in places with brown people, nah. In fact, I'm surprised that shit hasn't happened more often. Where you have a nation that incurs a lot of debt, starts paying it back, and then that money ain't worth shit. Like, yeah, we sent you the money that ain't backed by nothing. Well, we use this currency. I'm surprised that doesn't happen more often. I'm sure it does. We just don't hear about it because the issue with that. Can you imagine if the World Bank got fucked out of a bunch of money by a country like, nah, we don't want you over here no more. we kicked out the World Bank after the World Bank lends a bunch of money. I'm sure that happens in these little African nations, and I'm sure it happens in South America. But I bet you we don't hear about that shit.
Mm.
Think about it. That's a G move. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I'm gonna pay you these dollars, but these Finkles over here, that's where the real money is. You know what I'm saying?
But okay, there's so much corruption going on in South America and Central America that now the corruption is between local officials and corporations that want the natural resources. One of those natural resources I'm referring to is water. You keep hearing about water wars. The water wars actually started in 1999, December of 1999. Cochabamba, Bolivia. It started in December 1999. It continued for 5 months until April of the year 2000. The problem began when a new company, Aguas del Tenari, a joint venture involving Bechtel, the corporation, was required to invest in construction of a long-envisioned dam. And so they drastically raised the water rates for the surrounding cities, right? They increased the cost of water, for you to pay your water bill. Protests, largely organized through the coordinators or the Coalition in Defense of Water and Life, a community coalition, erupted in January, February, and April of the year 2000, culminating in tens of thousands of marching people downtown and battling police. 1 civilian was killed. On April the 10th, 2000, the national government reached an agreement with the coordinators to reverse the privatization. A complaint filed by foreign investors was resolved by agreement in February of the following year in 2001. There was a law passed. It was called Law 2029. To ensure the legality of privatization of the Bolivian government, they passed the Law 2029, which verified the contract with Aguas del Tenari. To many, the law appeared to give a monopoly to this company over all water resources. Many feared that this included water used for irrigation by peasant farmers and community-based resources that had previously been independent of regulation. The broad nature of that bill led many to claim the government would require a license to be obtained to collect rainwater from their roofs. So this was the one of the first in the news about
the first fire
over water and the fight over water resources. But it continues in South America, in the country of Peru. It was an article in May 19th, 2009 of the Scientific American magazine. It says that rising demand for irrigation and drinking water is draining the aquifers faster than it can recharge. The aquifers are these big rivers of water, lakes of water that are underneath the surface, right? And these are basically waterways that eventually connect to the ocean. And so a scheme was developed to channel more water from the Andean mountain highlands, which receive seasonal rainfall, is pitting big agribusiness on the coast against indigenous tribal people in the mountains. Peruvian officials disregard the problems of indigenous water refugees. As supplies dwindle, they say they can channel water from the highlands, where rain falls between October and April, and it can divert that flow east to the Amazon, which receives more precipitation than its sparse population uses. In Peru, officials say the problem is not the water scarcity, but nature's poor distribution. Of course, like the officials are going to say that because they're going to basically like take the blame off themselves, or they're going to take the blame off the corporations because they're shilling for these corporations. So they want to take that heat off of themselves. But I mean, again, when you hear that, it makes it like very easy to understand that who is being paid off. So more than 2/3 of the country's 29 million people live on the dry western side of the Andes Mountains, where less than 2% of the country's water flows, while only 1/4 of the people live in the Amazon basin, which can get more than 80 inches of rain a year. But plans to redistribute water by rerouting rivers or drilling through the Andes raise questions for which neither politicians nor scientists have any answers. How much water can be piped from the reservoirs in the Andean highlands or the Amazonian cloud forest without damaging these ecosystems? Who has a priority? Thirsty cities or food producers? Subsistence farmers or export agribusinesses? Poor rural communities or revenue generating mines?
Man.
Agriculture or hydroelectricity?
Here's what bugs me about the whole mining thing. Why do you need fresh water to mine? Why can't you use seawater to mine? You know what I'm saying? Like literally for this gold mining and this when it comes to how they spray it against the mountainside and it washes away. Why do you need fresh water for that?
Right. But see, but this is what I'm talking about. How, okay, in the first 200 years of Western civilization, I'm talking about the founding of America and the British colonies and the Spanish colonies in South America and the French colonies in Africa. Most of the wars have always been about a certain type of resource. It could be
Yeah.
oil.
Hmm.
It might be gold.
Gold,
It could be
the land
the
itself.
land
Yeah.
itself. But it's always these basic natural resources. Water never really came into the picture until now. So now you have all these. What I see happening is that the war for resources became more diversified. Where it was simple things in the beginning. It was simple things like, all right, we need this land, we need this gold, we need this oil. And it's like, okay, now we built up all these civilizations, so now we got to basically get the materials for these civilizations. And it's like, okay, so now we need more. We need the minerals that are gonna make the circuit boards in these cell phones. So let's go to the Congo and start some shit and cause division amongst the local tribes. Give them guns, give them weapons, have them shooting at each other while they can't. Why? Because you can't hear backhoes and you can't hear bobcats and
No.
you can't hear dump trucks over machine gun fire.
For instance, Afghanistan. Remember they were always, what's the big deal with Afghanistan? Why are we always over there? They ain't got no oil.
Minerals.
Nickel. They got nickel for them cell phone batteries. Oh, with all this future of all this battery making, that's going to be a huge resource. So yeah,
The reason why the U.S. military never pulled out completely and they still have support over there is because there's also American civilian contractors working over there protecting those mining sites.
that's the same thing that happened in the Middle East when it came to those oil resources, when it came to BP, British Petroleum, when it came to all these different things. That yeah, we have a presence over there because we're trying to protect our interest. We're not those people's friends. We don't care about that, but we want to make sure we have access to that oil, and we want to make sure that these American companies and these British companies are protected. So, like I said, what it is, corruption is so commonplace. What's the word? We've been desensitized to it. So when you could stare corruption right in the face, and oh, that's good business, and you start making that excuse, and I'm like, wait a minute. When did good business become more important than the people that actually buy the product? See, the thing is, like right now, me and you had talked about this off air. Like when we were kids, we used to always hear about this term. The lawyers run everything. I remember in the '80s, lawyers run everything. And I didn't understand what that meant when I was a kid. I'm older now. I get what that shit means. What they're saying is that everybody's afraid of being sued. And you got lawyers on the payroll who set this whole society up in a fugazi ass way with a bunch of words that don't really mean shit. So I get that now. But now the term that everybody uses that brainwashes people, oh, it's good for business. As if to say that saving 50 cents is more important than taking care of the people that actually buy the product that's been millions of dollars with you. That's where we are right now. And nobody wants to address that issue. Like, okay, the money you're saving, is it really worth it? Because back in the day, you had to have inventory. That's why we have a supply chain issue. Nobody owns the buildings anymore where they store inventory. LIFO, FIFO, last in, first out, and all this other shit you learn about in economics class. They don't do that shit anymore. What they do is they order directly from Japan, They have the shit literally sitting on ships in the Gulf or wherever, and then they bring them in as necessary. Then they save a couple dollars on inventory. Where I'm like, but now all of a sudden you ain't got no reserves. Like literally when this COVID thing hit and it went away, then all of a sudden we those resources, the supply chain was all fucked up. The trains ain't moving, the boats ain't coming into port. All that shit went down. So that should tell you, good for business ain't always good for America, and that's what the problem is. That these companies that make money here don't give a fuck about you as an individual, as a country, none of that shit. All they care about is the politicians they can corrupt and the money they can make. Like right now, like I told you, we're dealing with this shit right now where these railroads won't give us a raise, but they literally spent $28 billion buying back stock, but they spend less than that on income, on wages. These motherfuckers don't care, and so, but we keep. Oh, that's good for business. No, it's not. That is a hustle. That's that catch-all. That's that shit when you hear motherfuckers saying, "I'm not racist," but that's the shit. So we just need people to wake up and open their eyes and see the shit for what it is.
So let's talk about the business of giving speeches and why it
It's big
costs
business.
$100,000 for Howard
300.
University to pay former FBI Director James Comey to speak for 12 minutes. This guy got 12 minutes. I mean, he had 12 minutes to talk, and they gave him $100,000. Why is an HBCU paying this guy $100,000 to come and speak? He probably wasn't the only speaker that day. He may have been. It doesn't matter. But they're spending that money on something that could be utilized much more wisely.
See, people like to buy legitimacy. You know that. So if this guy comes to speak at, like, say it's their graduation seems so much more important now. That's ridiculous.
So
these former presidents, they make all kinds of money doing
now,
that shit.
for example, Ronald Reagan, when his term ended as president, he went to Japan and he was getting paid $400,000 to go to not just one company, but different Japanese companies and speak. And it's the same rubber chicken speech over and over, like a comedian going out and doing sets. And he was but he wasn't the only president. There's a lot of presidents that are making $400,000, $500,000, $500,000 to go and speak. And they do it all the time. Hillary Clinton gets paid the same amount and she was never fucking president. And it's why do you give a shit about listening to this person talk? Why would you spend that money? Because
why are you paying for a loser?
Because it's money laundering. It's a way of hiding money in plain sight. And it goes back to these charities, because these charitable funds, right? When they go and they pay a president to do that, they're not writing a check to him. They're writing it to this charitable foundation that this president has, so they can wash the money in that, so that the taxes on that money don't have to be paid. There's no capital gains tax on that money, right? So that's the crazy part. It's like, aha, gotcha. See, so they're doing more slick shit. This show about bribery gives you different examples in different parts of society where bribery is taking hold and controls entire nations. And it's on you to use this information now and do something dignified with this information. Look, that's all I got. We out. Peace.
Hey, don't sell out. Holla back.